Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. Now, I actually hold this movie quite near and dear to my heart, but mostly because it was a first date movie with an old school sweetheart of mine. Very weird movie for an introduction like that, but to me, there's something so unendingly sweet about this production. I just really like the world it brings in, and probably warped my style of humor a little too much in certain places. Still, it was the very first for animation from Sony Pictures Animation by the now iconic Lord and Miller. And even today, I think this movie really stands out as a standoutish movie that has that extra special something in it. But whilst on the surface, this movie has so many slapstick highlights, so many quotable collections, and so many memes way before even the concept of memes existed running for it, this movie still knows how to roll out all the punches in the right places for a genuinely heartfelt and emotive crux when it wants. So against all the cartoony goodness and over-the-top reactions and flailing, we're now gonna step in a little closer to when the movie chooses to take itself more seriously. The scene that changed Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs is when everything Flint has ever wanted comes crashing down, and he needs to be talked back up again by the one person who was there for his entire life. It's time for a dad talk. Now, the whole dynamic between Flint and his father is just they don't connect. Not in so much of a I hate you screaming fest, but their ideals and motivations are just completely misaligned. It's a more grounded and nuanced representation of parental disconnect. You've obviously got Flint, super genius inventor, quirkily gunning for the next wacky idea and the know-how to execute it, even if he doesn't fully comprehend the consequences of his actions. Juxtapose that with Tim. He enjoys the simple life. Fishing, rod tackles, sardines, and boats. He has a little shop and is a complete technophobe. He just doesn't understand the modern world. The perfect conflicting character traits to contrast our protagonist. And what's more, Flint has always been a bit of a mama's boy, and she has long passed, bestowing upon him full support for his technological dreams and gifting him the lab coat that he still wears to this day. They were the perfect parent who seemed to know all the right moves. And the dad, despite being there the whole time through all of Flint's attempts at breaking the mold, always saw reality for what it is from his grounded perspective. He always saw the disaster that came immediately after, be it a power outage, too much hair, a lost car, or permanent feet. And so as Flint has become a superstar with this new food invention, and literally the whole town adores Flint, his father is deflated, for his son hasn't taken up the family business, and maybe food falling haphazardly from the sky isn't such a good thing, since Flint has never been able to control his inventions before this. It's not that he hates his son, it's just he's concerned. He's a realist, and not so much a cartoon as everyone else in this world. And so come to the point in the film where everything has fallen apart. The food has mutated to oversize, the chance to stop the motion has exploded, and now there are spaghetti tornadoes. And who's there to pick up the pieces but Tim Lockwood himself? First, witnessing the tomatoey disaster on the streets, as well as a lone lab coat strung on a power line. Through the majority of this movie, Tim has been stood alone in his little tackle shop, grinding down sardines. He's been the outlier in this little town, separate from most of this food world. But now it's deemed that he must respond, grabbing the very coat that started this whole adventure off in the first place. Which was lost, by the way, mid-flight when Flint was tackling the spaghetti tornado. And so as the skies are red with sauce and the looming clouds of too many consumables linger in the background, Dad heads off to regather his son.
Flint?
Where is Flint to be found but at his happy place, in the dumping grounds of his lab, built back when he was a child and the core of all of his inventions. First showing us remnants of the environmental disaster with spaghetti noodles strudelled along the pipes before we see Tim searching around. Wide and high angle to see Flint is hard to spot.
Flint?
But you can catch him. His inventions haunt him. Like that time he created ratbirds for some reason. Don't know why he did that. We already have pigeons. But nonetheless, he's been found. And the dialogue is exactly the same as the last clip, but in reverse. This isn't gonna be a scene with a dynamically executed set of dialogue lines. In fact, it's gonna be almost completely the opposite. And that's the point. These two characters, don't really talk much to each other. This isn't a Spider-Gwen and Captain Stacy type situation where both parties have large points of their arguments. The dynamic for these two is typically distance. Even when Flint was a kid, he would scarper off quickly into his lab to work on his next big thing, practically leaving his dad in the dust for being so boring, slow, and just not on board. But his dad has finally found him.
Hey, Dad.
What are you doing?
Well,
the words aren't so much important here, it's the composition. Flint is literally balled up away into a little barrel. It's a weird choice. This is a weird movie. People are surprisingly flexible. And this is before the time of Hotel Transylvania or Ruby Gillman or Hotel Transylvania again. Noodle Boy here can fit in a barrel, and his dad can just tower over it. Camera looking down on him not only because it's the only way we can really see him, but because it makes Flint even smaller, reflecting precisely how he feels at the deepest point of the dumps he's feeling and is literally in. Whilst the reverse shot of this bubbles Tim away into a frame within a frame. He may be angled like some powerful figure, but still the composition says he's not. He is caged away from Flint since typically he has so little influence over his boy's life, always distant. Tim's head could have been central to the rim or shown more of his torso, but it doesn't. He's just a dinky little thumbhead against a metallic collage of past inventions and a mopey face. Flint's tech means so much to him, and Tim's gonna have an uphill battle if he wishes to connect with his son. But at the very least, he has that glistening golden lighting on him, angelified from a lighting perspective. Shame it's just not as encapsulating to Flint as the depression his tech has led him to.
I tried to help everybody, but instead I ruined everything.
Now, since the camera isn't changing over this moment, I'm gonna have to focus on the dialogue. It's just your classic moping. Flint's whole motivation is not just to have an invention that works, but to find a way to become one with other people. He's always been a weirdo. He's always been an outsider. His classmates back in the day bullied him. What he craves is popularity. He's a people pleaser, relishing the praises his giant relish brought to his town, and now facing the double whammy of not just another disastrous consequence of his invention, but also the fact that the people hate him for it. Well, most people.
Just a piece of junk.
And so, he has literally thrown himself in the bin, given up on his dreams, on his solutions, on his contribution to the world, to wallow away in the fetal position until further notice.
So, I threw myself away.
He's in a barrel, not exactly a bin, but you get the point. It's still a miniature joke in a way, but one that Flint is taking fully seriously. He's always been a bit of a weirdo, and what's more, this isn't just an everyday tantrum, this is a life-changing of a response Flint is rolling out, as this is applying to his entire identity, recontextualizing his perspective on everything Flint has done up to this point.
Don't you think it's time to give up this inventing thing? Get a real job. You don't keep throwing your net where there aren't any fish.
What?
As now, Flint is throwing away his entire inventor aspect of his life, retiring from the thing that brought him so much joy, and labeling them as nothing more than junk. This is, to a certain extent, everything that Timothy Lockwood wanted. Maybe not the upset son and the half-full barrel and the spaghetti tornado in the distance, but retiring from inventing was a piece of advice Dad gave way back near the start of the movie.
Along with all these dumb inventions. This is junk.
Back then, he was suggesting this from a realist perspective. It was him trying to avoid disaster and embarrassment for his son, focusing on the aftermath of these inventions as they have so routinely caused even more distress than their conception. He doesn't want to emotionally damage his son, he just wants Flint to have a secure life, rather than the gamble of this hobby of a career. Still, as he stands now, it's not the best case scenario, and he knows it's time to make things right. After all, Tim has been the only one to be by Flint's side through absolutely all of it. He's been there for every disaster, and he's been there for every cleanup. Just this one requires more effort from him. He was there for the spray-on shoes Flint lifts up.
This is junk.
He was there for the hair on Boulder.
Hair on Boulder!
And he was there for...
This is junk.
Flint. Throughout all the years, though they have never seen exactly eye to eye, Tim has always been supportive, in his own little way, even if he doesn't exactly understand or advocate for most of Flint's actions. Now we're shot side on and you can see more of the light beams cascading across this entire scene. It's surprisingly angelic, and has been there since the very start, as if the dad's arrival is a literal gift coming for some ascending reason. Just Tim, an ordinary bloke with ordinary ambitions, but pedestaled right now as the one that can help Flint the most, or has the drive to actually do so. Everyone else is still kind of peeved. Also, Flint's just showing his hand to really nail in how deplatformed he is, not even looking at the product being pointed to as junk.
Look, son, you listen, when your boat is, when it's listening, if it's not running.
And again, the words Flint needs to hear aren't really being heard. This is a dad out of his depths. Not only does he often disagree with his son, or struggles to understand all this techno-malarkey, but he also has the simple, disadvantageous trait of failing to communicate at all beyond his fishy little perspective. He speaks in fishing metaphors, as that is all he knows. The philosophies of parenting are a struggle on him, and it never resonates with his son.
That techno food, it's too complicated for an old fisherman.
And so, as we linger on this lowest angle shot, we see Tim fumbling to get his words out. He's a little bigger in that rim with his shoulders coming into view, but as we see from Flint's reaction, he's listening, and then you lose him. Now's not the time to talk about boats, even if he was going to imply that any issue can be fixed with grit or something.
You know,
Don't worry, Dad, I get it. Mom was wrong about me.
And so, just like every time before it, Flint shuts down on his father, never wanting to hear another fish metaphor and coming in with the completely wrong interpretation. Last time the two spoke, his dad was suggesting the whole food thing might not be such a good thing. The stakes were getting alarmingly big after all, and then the time before that, they were speaking of ending inventing.
I'm sorry, son.
Ouch.
No more inventing.
So running off of that pattern of conversations, Flint is responding to this talk with the understanding that his dad's here for a "I told you so, let's go" type of talk. If your boat's not running, you gotta get another boat, a better one. You gotta try a different career, a more secure one. But he's not saying that, and shutting him down is only extending his misery further, as much as he doesn't know that. Instead, bringing his mum into this, the motivator behind all of Flint's aspirations, the golden parent that Timothy could never live up to and desperately needs for some advice. This is Flint letting go of his mother as well, and the emotional crux to this entire downfall, through a person that deeply affects the both of them.
I'm not an inventor. I should have just quit when you said.
Back to the other way again, and now the camera is slowly craning in, focusing on Flint's conclusive thoughts and pushing Tim away as we linger on the moping. Only a slither of light peering onto Flint, just about catching his eyes. He is 80% shadow because the saddening is encapsulating him, and also it's sunset. He's telling us now that he is abandoning the timeline of events where he follows his mother's words and instead will follow his father's. An idea past Timothy would have loved, but it's laid out like a backhanded compliment, tarnishing the word of his late mother as if to say his dad is the one going against her. And so, the dad takes a moment. He doesn't have an immediate response. He's not much of an emotive character. He stops and looks around for a moment, wide for the first time since this scene started, surrounded by a full, rustic scrapyard of dumped dreams and aspirations. It's taking a breath in to see the full picture and get a new perspective. But still, those light beams are all there. As the soundtrack takes a more emotive tune, it's presented as a vaguely beautiful place. Before the brass comes in to tell us it's decision time. Looking down at Flint, entirely him center of the frame, depressed and deflated. The light of his eye fading too into the shadow, it's the moment for Tim to look at the world around him and make his move to help his son.
Well, when it rains, you put on a coat.
Starting while we still look at Flint, before cutting to this beautiful shot of his body beaming from those light beams, with a single line of fishy metaphor and the symbolic item that is more than just an article of clothing. It's Flint's lab coat, the very one his mother gave to him when he was a little child, the symbol of his career choice as an inventor and the direct contributions his mother gave to his life. It is, in essence, the mother and father coming together for a piece of advice, agreeing and resonating with their son for the first time, and positively supporting Flint's desire to continue in the line of science. A first, and precisely what Flint needs to continue. When the going gets tough, you adapt and persevere.
Dad, you know I don't understand fishing metaphor.
Ironically, the shadow now being a symbol of enlightenment as the silhouette of the garb lifts over the frame to slowly engulf Flint's face. His face, the reaction of one who'd thought he'd permanently lost the one item that still remains of his late mother, and the soundtrack crescendoing for the alternative view of this moment of... It's a shock to see it here, the odds of recovering it minuscule, but it's a reminder. The catalyst of all of Flint's actions, essentially a piece of him that had been permanently lost, and nothing could elevate him faster outside of this barrel bin than this small little piece of fabric. Let go. It's a revival of sorts, with a reassuring nod. Finally, Flint is back in the cascades of light beams from the setting sun, reunited with his most treasured item. And despite always being so distant from his dad, for once he is the one who can deliver and pull Flint out of this mental rut. And much like Flint was so quick to leave before, so too is the dad now. He's done all that he needs to. Is this a negative trait of Tim still not quite mastering the art of an emotive scene? Or is it more that he knows Flint will scatter off into the distance, so is giving him a head start, understanding of his role as a background support character in his life? Or perhaps just giving out a cheeky callback to their dynamic as a duo. Whatever it is, it's kind of endearing in a way. And it works.
Come on, Steve. We've got Diem to carpe.
And with a doofy little catchphrase and a low angle of self-importance, we're back on track for a montage of repairing every problem they face. The scene is a surprisingly small one. It's paced incredibly fast, all of the beats, and the beats themselves are actually pretty minuscule. He showed up, said one naff line, and then gave out a code. But sometimes that is just the awkward dynamic of a father and a son, communicating difficultly in their own little way. But you can understand the translation underneath it. Or just take a translation directly.
I'm proud of you, Flint. Your mom, she always knew you were going to be special. Just know that fishing metaphor means I love my son.
It's the scene that turns around from the lowest part of the movie's emotional swing, and it does so in a nuanced and interesting way of a resolution between two conflicting characters. Back with his coat, Flint can now go on to invent a sequel, hire a crew, tackle the beast, and beat it with the very first invention he brought to the table in the first place.
Spray-on shoes!
A spray-on shoes!
And that was the scene that changed Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs for being the emotional piece in the center of this circus act. Truly, I think this movie is a little ahead of its time, incredibly charming, very memeable, and just a lot of fun all around. But for now, I'll be heading off here. My name's been Daz, you didn't really care, and I'll see you in a little bit.